Hi folks, today I have a special treat for everybody where I get to chat with Chris Thorogood, one of the founders of Sienci Labs. He goes into talking about where they came from, hint, a laundry room, where they are now, and a little bit about where they're going. And we get to answer a lot of your questions along the way. So strap yourself in. We have a great hour conversation with Chris Thorogood from Sienci Labs here on McLaughlin Woodcraft. Anyway, welcome, Chris. Welcome to the channel. Welcome to Noobs for Noobs. For those of you that don't know who I am, my name is Gary McLaughlin. I'm pretty new to this. I've been doing CNC sign making since July of last year and did quite a bit of research on what mill I would purchase. And being a member of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, I tend to research things almost to death, as my wife would say. So I found CNC basically on a web search, and I looked into it. I was going to get involved with the Kickstarter, which is something I want to get into with you, Chris, out of the gate, to kind of let the community know exactly who you are, exactly where CNC started. And so let's start with that, Chris. So go ahead, introduce yourself to everybody.
Oh, sure, yeah. So I'm Chris Thorogood. I'm one of the co-founders of Sienci Labs alongside Andy. And, let's see. I mean, we've been working away at Sienci Labs for over 5 years now. Really it started as a bit of a theoretical project. Andy and I actually met in a mechanical engineering program in Ontario at the University of Waterloo. He'd actually come up with an interesting idea of essentially a way of using linear motion affordably. And that was actually through that, you take the L extrusion, you turn it 45 degrees, and you run V-wheels across it. And the idea, at that time, there wasn't really an idea of how we were going to use it. Andy actually tried contacting some individuals to see if they'd be interested in, using the idea. But, that didn't really lead anywhere. And so then the next thought was, what are we going to do with this? At the time, I was very much into 3D printing. So I was familiar with the 3D printing industry, and I knew that we would have no chance going into that market. It was one that was rapidly exploding and had a lot of overseas competition. And so, but our design we knew was quite rigid, and so we thought we could apply it to CNC machine design. And basically, that first led to the Mill 1 design that we came out with. Which is a much smaller form factor CNC machine that didn't sell super well. It was hard for us to find our footing. Andy and I aren't marketers. We're kind of technical guys. We just kind of enjoy what we do. And so I don't know if you want me to tell the entire story, but over a couple of years of kind of fumbling here and there, and receiving a lot of feedback about the Mill 1 design, that people liked it a lot, but they wish they could cut a larger area, that eventually led to the emergence of the long mill, which was also kickstarted. Because, we're a small company, we're trying to, get our ideas out there, and so that was kind of the platform that we used to validate that people wanted to buy it, and also have the upfront funding so we could actually produce it.
Well, that's great. I'm glad you mentioned the Mill 1, because that's what hooked me. That's what hooked my wife and I when we were looking. And there was a few videos out at the time, and we were looking at the time, inventable stuff. And when the Mill 1 came out, you touched on the size of, obviously that was a hook for us. because it was so small at the time, but it was something that we could have got our dug our teeth into a little bit. So we were really looking at that, and of course the long mill shows up, and it just was for our company the answer. That was the size we needed. That was how we wanted to go. But tell me a little bit about, you don't have to get into super detail obviously, but tell me a little bit about the concept behind the Mill 1 and kind of how that all came to fruition.
Yeah, well, so Andy and I are very much, I would say, members of the maker community as a whole. We're very much keeping we in our own personal time, even we keep track of open source projects and open source developments, more so in the hardware space, because we're very much hands-on guys. And so when we come up with this idea, it's kind of like the initial concept of linear motion is placed in our hands, right? And now the question to go from there is, we're Canadian guys. We want to build a mostly Canadian product, even though, there are some things that are hard to get from Canadian companies that aren't just resells from overseas. How can we build a unit that is simple enough that we can manufacture it in a way that we can still get enough of a profit margin that we're not dying, but it's still a reasonably competitive price. And to be honest, that's been the motto of our, that's kind of been behind the scenes of our company all the way up until today even. We still aren't a super big company, and we still try to push to have as much of our stuff made locally as we can. Now, Canada is not very well known for certain types of manufacturing, like certain states are. If you exist in certain states, you can kind of talk to this guy, they'll be like, oh, we make stuff for NASA. You talk to this guy and they're like, oh, we have the biggest drop forge in the country or whatever. But in our area, it's a little bit harder. So we spend our time looking really hard, seeing if we can work with certain manufacturers to make parts locally. We spend a lot of time on the design side of things. And one thing that we really leverage actually is 3D printing, which emerged in the Mill 1 design and the long mill design as a way to essentially take complexity that exists in a CNC router system and kind of squeeze it into these more complicated parts that we print so that the remaining parts can be quite simple. Because obviously if we want to machine something out of a block of aluminum for a really complicated part, that would be really expensive to do here locally. But because we have our printer farm, we're able to kind of push the complexity towards the printed parts and run that in-house to save the costs there. And then we have our other simple parts, which are like the extruded aluminum or, straight cut steel plates that are powder coated or something like that.
Yeah.
I guess the Mill 1 was kind of like our practice run in that regard. It leveraged a lot of those ideas. It had most of the complexity in the printed parts. We're trying to try to reuse the same hardware in as many different spots as we can. And to be honest, a lot of what goes into the design of the machines is also very beneficial towards the end users, because if you've got a design that's very simple, that means it's also very simple to assemble. And that is actually something that is a goal for us as well, because we want our machines to be, for the most part, shipped in a way that you still have to assemble it, because we feel like if people can get to know their machines a little bit more, then they're not feeling like it's some, I guess, nebulous technological thing that's just shown up at their house, and if something goes wrong, they have no clue how to fix it. And so, is it really yours at that point? If instead it shows up and sure, we'll take care of assembling maybe something that's super cumbersome. Like for the long mill, we have the pre-assembled linear rail assembly, because we have jigs that just makes the assembly easier to do in-house. But for the most part, the rest of it, we just design it so that it's as easy to assemble. And now you, the user, understand your machine, and you don't feel like locked out from it, right? Which is I think is a nice thing to do. If you wanted something like at the CNC level that's as automated as something like a paper printer, which I have up there, it could exist, but you'd just be paying so much money at that point. The industry just hasn't progressed far enough to be able to justify that cost. And Andy and I, we want to make machines for the average person, right? The Mill 1 especially, the idea for it was, we don't want to, the idea isn't like, let's make a small machine. The idea is, let's make an entry-level machine, right? And what factors go into a machine being entry-level? Well, a big one is cost, right? If someone wants to try out CNC and it's way too expensive, then they might never try it out. And so dealing with things like cost, that's a big barrier to entry. The complexity, that complexity comes in the form of both the complexity of the design, if you're having the user assemble it on their end, but also things like documentation and resources and helpful guides and videos and stuff like that. That's all stuff that we try to spend a lot of time on, because we feel like giving that guidance means that you don't just have a box show up and then you ask yourself, now what? And so that's another big barrier to entry, is that complexity happening at all those different steps along the way. And then, of course, the last step that people get a bit scared by is the software aspect. And, we know full well that there are a lot of software packages out there. We haven't been able to dive in and make our own, because we feel like if we were, it would just be so rudimentary at this point, and there are other great packages out there. And so instead, we're trying to focus on providing education for those other packages that already exist. The only area where we thought we could improve is with GSender, which is our G-code sending software. And that's basically like, I guess I've been rambling on for a little while now, but a lot of the times when Andy and I are doing something, we really feel like we will only do it if we feel like it's significantly good enough. That was the reason why we kickstarted both machines. With the Mill 1, it was like, okay, this is a great idea, but like, we're not going to be like some products. You can go really hard in the marketing and like convince people that they want it, but we can't. We don't want to go and just like force people to buy machines. We want to make something that people want, and where the product kind of speaks for itself. And so and also it makes us feel better that we're not just like making something that's 1% or 2% better than something that's already on the market. It would have to be significantly better for someone to look at the product and realize like this makes sense. And so that's kind of what we've always done, is like, we released the Mill 1. We said we got to have at least 100 people or 100 sales of this machine if we want to actually create a company around it, and that happened. And then with the long mill, I think it was that one especially. We thought like, because we'd been playing around with the Mill 1 for I think like 2.5 or 3 to 3.5 years maybe at that point, to not too much success. So the goal we set for the long mill was even higher. I think it was like 300 or 350 or 400 units, like somewhere around there. And we said, if this doesn't, like, if we don't reach this goal, then that means we haven't made something that is interesting enough for people to want. Yeah.
So the long mill comes out. Actually, let's talk about the mill one. The mill one comes out. Like you said, you and Andy are sitting there kind of just watching, I'm going to assume, or at least kind of going, wow. And then, holy crap, like they sell. And
yeah.
And then, like, what was that moment like when it was just, wow, like people out there are liking our stuff?
Oh, I mean, it feels pretty good, right? Like, I mean, I think Andy and I are we try to be realistic with ourselves. So like even up until the last hour, we were still like, it's past its goal, but it could still fail. We don't want to celebrate too early. But when it's closed, like, yeah, that's a pretty big deal. I mean, at that point, we're just two guys. We have a garage. Like we're in a shared student housing with three other guys. I think we were both sitting in my room at the time, like staring at the computer. And up until then, we were 3D printing stuff in the laundry room and doing machine validation in the garage. So it's like,
that's awesome.
Yeah. So then it's really exciting. But then obviously, like Andy and I are I guess men of action. And
yeah.
So that feeling stays for maybe like 10, 20 minutes, and then it instantly is like, okay, now we gotta like do it. Like we gotta make sure people get the machines. We'd already made kind of a vague plan of what to do. Obviously, we wouldn't have started a Kickstarter if we didn't have a plan.
Right.
But now we're like, instantly, it's like, okay, now people expect this machine. They want it to be the quality that they expect. Like, let's get to work and make sure it happens, right? So then that's what very briefly followed.
So you guys are working out of a laundry room and a garage and a dormitory, if you will, and the public responds. And then you guys decide to upgrade, if you will, and come up with a bigger product. And then you put it out there to the world, and boom, same thing happens. Yeah. Wow. And then has it now just snowballed, or has it been like how do you kind of keep between the goalposts? I mean, your product has been battle tested. I mean, it's been very successful. I'll give you a bit of feedback from our company's perspective before I get your answer on this. But again, so we find your company, we find your product. Leanne, my wife, is a paramedic / firefighter, and I'm a cop. We are not engineers. We are not mechanically inclined for the most part. We have to find something that we can physically build, and we are an example of a literal ma operation where we have gone from, and we still are. We're working out of our garage right now. Actually, everything's packed up because we're moving. But, to create, stuff like this from, like, I started in the 3D printing world. Like, I put this here because it's Ghostbusters Day, and I built a full-scale working proton pack with my 3D printers.
Cool.
But, and we come along and we put our money where our mouth was. And like you said, it was very competitive, and it was Canadian for us, and it was we're from Ontario, we're from Muskoka originally, and now I'm working out of the Okanagan in BC, transferring to Newfoundland in just a couple of weeks, so big move for us. But we needed something that we could put together, and like you said, we literally sat in our kitchen, and we went on YouTube and watched you in real time assemble a long mill, one step at a time. And we literally turned the same Allen wrenches that you turned, the same everything. It was like, this is the tool we use for this, and we have a tool. And we literally had no problem whatsoever. It went together perfectly, and we've been running it nonstop since July of last year. And knock on wood, no problems. None, not one. We've learned a lot of things along the way. We fired it up the first day to start something and snapped the bit like that. That was our very first cut. And, learning lessons on the way. Everything that we've had problem-wise were our fault because we're learning. But so again, we are makers just like you started, and the long mills are selling, and you guys are going, holy crap! You're in a dorm. What now? What's the next step? What do you guys do? You suddenly have a long mill, and you have to get it out the door. What was the transition from the laundry room to where you guys are now?
Oh man, I mean, I mean, first of all, I'll just say I'm really happy you guys are enjoying your machine. It makes me feel so great to have put something out there that creates so much enjoyment and success, and people can use. So let me think. So I mean, it's been a long like 5.5 years. Not easy for Andy and I by any stretch of the imagination. But I mean, starting a company, like, it's hard, I don't know how much detail you want me to get into, but I mean, like, Andy and I start, like, even when the mill one completes, right? Like when I tell you we were sitting at our computer and saw the Kickstarter complete, we were taking a break from, like, studying for our classes. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. We're in school, and that honestly, like, it wasn't long before Andy was, he kind of was, like, not super enjoying the classes. Mechanical engineering degree wasn't exactly what he thought, so he kind of started working on it full time. I actually kept working on the company even while I was in school, and that was really difficult for me. And actually, an interesting thing about the University of Waterloo, I don't know if other universities have this, but first off, if you make an idea while you're there, it belongs completely to you. And second of all, they have this interesting program called Enterprise Co-op. In the mechanical engineering program, you have to take co-ops, so you're kind of cycling on and off study term, work term, study term, work term. And the Enterprise Co-op allows you to work for your own company for a co-op credit.
Nice.
And so I'm taking every single one of these co-op, Enterprise Co-op portions that I can to kind of, like, I have to study for 4 months, but then I quickly, like, come back and I work as hard as I can to try to, like, make up for the fact that I was just studying, and then I have to go back to school again, then I come back and I work as hard as I can. So over the period of time that like, from the mill one to the long mill, I would, if it were a graph, I would say, like, you're kind of, like, shooting up from the success of the long mill, and then, we kind of have enough money set aside to be able to do some more experimental stuff. And so that experimental stuff's happening, so it's kind of wiggling. But actually, leading up until the launch of the long mill, the long mill, we're kind of, like, falling back down. The mill one is, like, it has good margins, but we didn't sell a whole lot of them, and it was hard. Like, I think for the first 2 years, Andy and I are paying ourselves basically nothing, and we experimented having other students, like other co-op students, working for our company. We experimented with hiring a couple individuals full time, one which is in marketing, to try to help us with the marketing, one which was in mechanical design. We tried a lot of different stuff. The machines were selling okay, and actually, I think it was another year and a half over that period of time from the completion of the mill one Kickstarter. About a year and a half between that point, we slowly started renting more rooms in the house, till at one point in time we were renting every room in the house. So we had, and we converted one to be the 3D printing room. One was like an office space. One of them was a room that I was still living in. One of them was a room that Andy was still living in. Um, and we actually needed more space because there wasn't enough to do all of the Mill 1 operations. And so we did actually move to a building in Kitchener, which was subsidized by a accelerator center program that we were a part of. It was still expensive for us, more expensive than the house, but we needed the space, so we decided to go and move. And mind you, like, not only this whole time are Andy and I, trying to work on the documentation and work on the website and figure out all the e-commerce and the supply chain and the fulfillment and continuing to improve the design of the Mill 1. It actually went through 3 major iterations, slowly making small tweaks here and there to bring more improvements to the machine. But also, Andy and I are going to lots of events to pitch and try to get grant funding so that we can use that to inject back into the company. Mm-hmm. Now, Andy and I know that we kind of have like some interesting ideas because a lot of these pitches that we went to, they didn't quite see
the vision
behind it, which is why I'm glad that Andy and I still own 100% of Sienci Labs, because there were a lot of people along the way that told us that we had to like shift to different avenues because they told us it wouldn't work. But we did get enough grant funding that kind of contributed towards the first couple years of running our company, keeping the lights on and stuff like that.
For sure.
But yeah, because we kind of were experimenting with all these things, we'd moved to a new that separate office space now. We were trying to hire more people on. We were actually taking some like kind of experimental contracts to work on more industrial CNCs on the side. So a lot of different stuff. We even ran actually some CNC classes in person to try that out as well. But yeah, basically we realized that I guess it was good. It was like right in the nick of time because we had started testing with the long mill design and working with beta testers on that and iterating through it for months at that point. And we told everyone that we were going to launch the Kickstarter in March of that year. That was 2019. I think it was 2019. And we kind of realized like if we like at that point, we realized we had to kind of like thin out our team a little bit to actually be there for the Kickstarter launch in the first place. So we said if we like basically liquidate the entire Mill 1 stock and just go back to me and Andy, then we should be able to continue creating like the final bit of promotional materials and designs and working with the manufacturers and stuff like that to make it to the Kickstarter, see what would happen, and then go from there. If the Kickstarter didn't go through, the Sienci Labs would probably have finished, basically.
Yeah.
And all of the like long mill Kickstarter promotional material, that was all made by me and Andy. Like we up until this point, we basically don't contract out any work. Almost anything that you see our company do is done by our internal team, which means that up until maybe like a year and a half ago, every single thing that our company has done has been me and Andy.
Wow.
Like all of the website design, all of the marketing material, all of the product pictures, like everything has been us. But yeah, like it kind of like re-swelled after the long mill Kickstarter. I mean, I knew we set an ambitious goal, but I think it was within the first like 24 hours, we'd kind of got I think like $100,000 or something like that. Like it was at least it was a very large amount.
Yeah.
so at that point, we felt pretty confident. We said that was a very exciting point for us as well, for sure.
So, so
Yeah.
Chris, you can just see the passion, man. You really can. And let me take you back again to one of your points you said. So there you guys are. You're pounding the pavement. You're going out to shows and trade shows, I assume, and things like that. And you're out there and rolling up your sleeves, and you have these people coming up to you, and a lot of people are going to relate to this. Very, very, very huge. You've used the word goals. You've used the word hard work. Clearly, you're demonstrating it. And you're getting these people kind of pecking at you. This is not a good idea, Chris. You're going to lose your shirt, Chris. This is a horrible idea. Andy, what are you doing? I'm sure you both looked at each other in the mirror or looked at each other across the room from each other and what are we doing some days? And here you are, man. You are running, in my opinion, a very successful company. Definitely a company that I am very happy to say that I've purchased from and will continue to purchase from. And, you know, as that future potential customer, which is kind of what Noobs for Noobs targets, the things that I want to, because I am a person that's still learning. I'm still trying to figure out how to take something, put it up on a computer screen, hit print, and, you know, stuff like this pops up, and learning all the way and trying to help out as much as I can. And you guys have started in a laundry room, which I think is hilarious. There's a t-shirt idea, started in a laundry room, to having people tell you that you're going to fail, just to summarize. And then, you know, you guys are going like this, and then you're going like this, and then you're going like this, and now, of course, I'm hoping it's like this.
Mm-hmm.
Here you are, man. Like, what does that feel like? Like, really, what does that feel like?
Oh man, I mean, like it's like, obviously being told by people that you are doing the wrong stuff, that can be hard. I mean, thank goodness. I think Andy and I make a really good team. Thank goodness that we kind of had each other, because it would give us that comfort. Like, we'd be sitting in a room with some other people who are supposed to be, you know, way more experienced than us than at business or design or whatever, telling us, you know, we probably shouldn't do that thing. And then we look at each other and, like, you know, have that understanding that, like, no, I think we're good. Like, we're going with what we think makes sense. And, you know, it hasn't failed us up until this point, barely. So we're going to keep doing that. But I mean, yeah, like, sometimes, like, I guess, even after the success of the long mill, you know, I'm always trying to stay, I guess, like, a bit realistic with, like, what could happen. The last thing I want to do is, you know, I guess, start to lose my grounding in like the work that needs to be done, right? We've known since the start that even working on the long mill, that any day I could wake up and a bigger company than us, like Inventables or Carbide 3D or any of the other hobby CNC competitors in the market, we could wake up one morning and they could have made a machine that is similar performing to us for a similar price point. Like, it's not like we don't have anything proprietary. It's a completely open source design, right? All that we've got going for us is, like, we got to keep putting in that gusto to make sure that, like, if we are gonna wake up tomorrow morning and they have made that change, then we should be prepared so that the very next day we'll have something even better. Right. That's like what we have to do. And so, yeah, there have been, like, really great times to be able to, like, very shortly after the success of the long mill Kickstarter, like, I had to go back to school to finish another term, and then there was, like, some mix-up with our office, and nobody told us, and it was supposed to be demolished, and it was just like a crazy situation where they gave us 2 weeks to move out, and then they would take everything down. And so then I'm like taking time off my classes and biking over to like some locations that Andy and I are scouting so we can move there, because we not only like we have to find a place and sign it, and it has to be available to move in, and then we have to get the truck and we have to load everything in and we have to move it in 2 weeks. Like that's like, and that just kind of shows like that sometimes, you know, there's not a whole lot of time to celebrate. But of course, like after having that successful moving day and, you know, we're all sitting there exhausted, I'm like, wow, this is a big space. I think this will do really great. At least for the short term, though we had to sign like a 2-year lease. But once again, like it's kind of like a combination of bad luck and good luck. In this case, we actually did fill up the entire new office space in about 11 months. And then our landlord was really nice, and he was able to give us even more space that originally was for him, for his own personal stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then we took up that space really quickly, and then we got lucky that the other company that was in the building happened to want to move out, and so we did a lease takeover for them, and now Sienci Labs is the entire building, and I'm sure in a couple more months we might need a bit more space, but I guess we'll see. I mean, it's really great for me. I really enjoy my work in the day-to-day. I don't think I ever like sit there and say to myself, like, I'm done. I've made it, right? Like I don't think for me there's ever been any point of kind of like a time to rejoice. There was a great night that we had actually, where we had an open to the public night to celebrate the completion of the Kickstarter, and that was really fun. At that point, we had a couple other employees now working for us full time, and after having a lot of other like ups and downs, we pushed super hard, and were able to finish shipping out the remaining Kickstarter machines by Christmas, and that was like a really big moment for us, because then we could be like, yes, we did it, and we can go and enjoy Christmas with our own families. Yeah. Know that there's like nothing to stress about. Everyone's got their machines. But yeah, like as soon as you get back in January, it's like, all right, now we need to transition over to starting to sell these month to month, right? And like we need to go back to some more events and try to get some more eyes on it. You know, we spent all this money on this big office. We got employees now. You know, we gotta start rolling this into a more sustainable, you know, month-to-month operation, and that whole process is, to be honest, still ongoing, because even as we're kind of like catching up, then suddenly, I mean, very much to the thanks of our users, because when they like their machines and they're telling their friends about it, then we get more purchases from that, and it resulted in us not being able to keep up, and so then, you know, it's a good problem, right? Spending the time to make the supply chain work more smoothly, so that people don't have to wait to get their machines. But I mean, like, I guess like that's like the businessman in me that's kind of developed over the years.
But what's the maker Chris feeling though? I mean, like literally, like you guys started where you started, and I have things right over my shoulder because of the stuff that you and Andy did, and not just me, but go on the Facebook page, which I know you do, and the forums and all that. So, you know, I mean, I'm you know, in a unique career where patting yourself on the back isn't something that we are known to do as well. But please take the time to do that. That's my advice to you. So you're getting into where I want to go next, and it's amazing how that's just naturally happening. Okay, so long mill's done. Long mills are out. Long mills are battle hardened. you know, people are not only because it's open source, people are, if something's going wrong, they post something on the forums or the Facebook page, and people are right there. This is how you fix things, or this is how things get a little bit better, or this is how, you know, you get around this issue, and whether it's software, whether it's hardware. And then this is what I noticed. So the next big thing coming around was the laser. And like over here, jeepers, I'm all backwards. So I made my badge, and in the center I did a resin-filled graphic of my logo, my corporate logo, if you will. And it was, for me, and using the software that I was using, it was not allowing me to do something at that detail, so I would just print a graphic. And it's always bothered me that there was nothing, and when I did the Noobs for Noobs meetings and stuff that I did with people over the last few months, whenever I get a chance to, the laser comes up all the time. The laser, what laser, and what should I use? And I'll go on Amazon, and Amazon will have a laser, so why don't I try that laser? And then people that have used stuff said, and it's what you guys have done, whether it's with your bits, or whether it's with your dust shoe, or whether it's any of those add-ons and things that we as users need. We need quality. That's number one. And quality doesn't come cheap always. And I have learned that the hard way. And that's one of the messages that I want to get out to people is, I'm telling you, just because if you can get a handful of bits and they cost $5, there's a reason for that. And understand that. And you're going to trade headaches for $5 and things like that. But again, and the laser was a lot, because we started looking, and through the contacts I made online, people were saying, jeepers, there's not a lot of good lasers and safe things out there. So then all of a sudden, Sienci Labs comes out with a laser. So go ahead, tell me about that. Tell me about that process.
Oh yeah, I mean, like we're always it's important you bring that up because like people want things to be the lowest cost possible, right? And we want things to be the lowest cost possible because we're trying to be like an accessible CNC company, right? We don't want to be like saying, oh, like for example, when you look at the website, right? We to buy a machine, it's not one of those setups where like you put the machine in the cart, but then it says, oh, but you still need a router mount. You still need this. You still need this. It's like, you know, we just want to make sure that like people can get things and they're not like tricked into paying more. And if they are paying more, they're getting their money's worth, right? So yeah, so like in some cases with our accessories, like the touch plate, for example, we feel like the touch plate is like an accessory that a lot of people should have with their machine.
Absolutely.
I think it's beneficial for a lot of people. Most other places that you go, you'll find it's being sold for like over $100, even though it's a piece of metal. And I think it's because they feel like they can get people to pay that amount. So for us, the touch plate is like way more affordable. I can't remember the exact price for some reason, but I feel like it's like between $35 and $45 Canadian. By the way, if I say any prices while we're talking, obviously it's in Canadian.
Yeah.
For anyone that's watching in the States. But yeah, in some other cases where, you know, we're trying to make something like a laser, and we're trying to make sure it has the best quality parts we can, and we're trying to be like it's not what we do. We don't like buy something and rebrand it. Like if you see something from us, we have made it ourselves. Like all of the parts are being made either like locally or like sometimes we work with people overseas, but you know, it's all coming into us. We're the only people that have it. And for the laser especially, it was actually something that emerged out of a bit of a passion project from one of our employees, Andy and I had heard lots of people saying, like, talking about lasers and stuff like that. But for us, it felt like something that, like, might take too much of our time potentially, or might be hard to ensure reliability in operation. So he's one of our employees that started it out of a passion project, and we kind of, like, enabled him to keep doing that work and take time out of his daily work even to work on it and test it and do stuff like that. And until it got to the point where we started working with him because he wanted it to be a long mill accessory. And we said, that sounds like a good idea. I think people would really like it. And so but it's tricky because, people see a lot of these cheap lasers, and so you want to make it cheap. But there are a lot of parts that go into a laser, like a lot of smaller parts that need to be well made. Even like the circuitry needs to be well made if you want it to run reliably. Definitely, when it comes to the laser, we're holding our breath still. We want to put in the best work that we can, and it's a really hard thing to do well. But we've put in a lot of research into it, and so we're hoping that research and the time spent and the testing that we've done and all that stuff really pays off, so that we're offering a product that works reliably. It's powerful enough for you to use it for whatever application, and even so that we can have documentation on how to be safe while using it, what speeds to be using on different materials, what materials to avoid cutting. We really want to make sure that it's like a fully supported product. Yeah, I guess that's all I have to say.
Well, we're thrilled. As soon as we get set up, we're going to be like you guys. We've outgrown our garage, and we're going to be setting up a shop once we get to Newfoundland, and we're really excited about that. And we have a whole checklist of things we want to do. But the reality is the fact that you guys have shown that you're flexible enough, even on an internal setup that you have, where it's an employee that's saying, "Hey, check this out, guys." And I mean, it's what the users are asking for. And I know that's probably a challenge sometimes, but the fact that your company is flexible enough to do that, I mean, again, it's just showing my company that it's a company that we want to associate with. So that's pretty awesome. We're getting a little long in the tooth here, Chris, and I really appreciate the time that you've spent with me today. But I'm not letting you off the hook right away. I'm going to ask you. So here we go. We started with mill one. We started then we transitioned to long mill. Then we transitioned into accessories for the long mill, and you touched a little bit on, an industrial application. But hey, man, it's a talk show right now, if you will. So where are we going from here, man? Give us a little, without revealing your hand, so to speak. But where's the company going from here, man? Like, what's the next? I mean, you guys have faced COVID challenges like the rest of the world. I'm sure that had some fundamental impacts on your business. But hey, like we're all thankfully coming out of that cloud that we've all been living in, thank goodness. And where's Sienci Labs going? I mean, what's the next year looking like?
Well, one thing I will say is we're not quite out of the cloud yet. Andy and I, or I guess I should say Andy and some of our other supply chain management teammates have had to pull some pretty serious strings on some of the parts that we're trying to put together for the next batch, so that we can keep the delivery of long mills seamless. We try to make sure it looks very smoothly operating in the front, but sometimes they'll hold your stuff, or sometimes you'll call them up and you'll say, put these chips on this board, and they'll say, we run out of this chip. And so we've had to be dealing with that. But yeah, I mean, I think so. What you're asking is a really good question, and actually, I feel like sometimes we even find ourselves in that position as well, right? We don't really like we kind of like hearing what people are wanting. We're trying to kind of implement that, flying by the seat of our pants in some cases, but you know, putting in the effort because we do want to create that like an ecosystem so that if you want to buy a machine and then you want to be able to add things on so that it can kind of grow with you, that exists, right? Things like the laser, things like the touch plate. So as of right now, without saying too much, just in case things change.
Good advice. Good advice.
What we have been working quite hard on some other things that are more supportive to the main machine, so that for more advanced use, people can be picking these up. Similar to the laser is a bit more of an advanced use. So we've got some other stuff that we're working on for that similar reasoning. And so that should enable people who have had their machine for a long time or people just learning about it today to be able to come in and pick these up and be able to instantly enhance the work that their machine does. As well, there are, as you've probably seen, we've been making steady incremental changes to the long mill since it was first released on Kickstarter. Sometimes those changes are to assist us with like packing or quality control. Sometimes those changes are based on customer feedback. If like something is hard to adjust or not working out quite well, then we start looking into seeing how we can maybe tolerance it better or approach or maybe change the geometry of the part altogether.
I think the dust shoe would be a good example of that, probably.
Yeah, that's the big example of, and you should have seen the dust shoe before even the version 1. But yeah, even the very first version dust shoe, it had a lot of rough edges, and then I feel like the next version, the magnetic dust shoe, really was able to solve a great majority of the problems. We still had some people with the window breaking, and so recently we found a way to manufacture the windows out of a different clear plastic, and so now that has been addressed. And so I think for the most part, people are quite satisfied with the design as it stands right now.
Totally agree.
And I was happy that we were able to actually implement even more features into it, and the price stayed very similar to the same. And I think that the dust shoe design is like one that, I mean, I've never seen another design like it. I went through, I think, like 15 iterations on the design to get to that one. It took me a long time. To come back, you know, we're working on slow iterations to the long mill design. Well, the demand for long mills is steadily increasing, and we want to be able to continue to meet the demand and make sure that the machines are being produced well, and also continue to address some of the other drawbacks of the design. That some of them are like not drawbacks at all. It's kind of like the way the machine is perceived, more so than the way that it actually is. And so we've been working, like the idea's been in I guess the gears for quite a few months now. Actually, I feel like more than half of a year, to see if we can add a couple more tweaks to a new version that we want to see if we can release for the long mill. So outside of like the supporting the ecosystem and the tweaks to the machine, I think that's kind of like the main area of scope for us. We have a couple other, I guess, like more software oriented things that we've been working on. Obviously GSender is like a really big one, that we have two really that like they're really I guess I got a bit tongue twisted, but they're good at what they do. Two
Mm-hmm.
developers that are really good at what they do, as well as myself, spending a lot of hours every week to essentially like rebuild a G-code sender. Not quite from the ground up, but there are a lot of aspects that needed to be addressed to make it something that we're proud of and we feel like works for the average person. But we're getting close to a state where we can kind of shift from very aggressive development to more progressive development. And those guys' hours are going to then start moving over to some other ideas that we've been tossing around for a while. One that they were able to work on near the start was our little toolchain wizard, which is like a neat little thing where we spent time gathering information for over 80 different design, CAM, and sending programs. Mm-hmm. And we were able to make some very simple questions that you can answer, and it'll basically recommend to you a series of software, like either just one program that does all three things, or one that does two of them and one does the last. And so that's something that we spend some time on. But the benefit that these little like software improvements offer to our customers, it might not be what someone would normally consider as like software support. Mm-hmm. But it definitely requires, the work of software developers or web developers. Yeah, I don't have anything. I guess I can't give you anything like.
No, that's great. No,
more
that's
than
great.
That.
It also makes you reflect a little bit, even just to kind of go, where are we going from here? I mean, every one of us that has a long mill and are doing our own thing. One of the things that I like hearing, Chris, is stick to what you're good at. And once we got set up and going, Leanne and I decided what we want to do is we want to kind of go to the farmer's market level. Let's just make some signs that we could quickly make, flip them out the door, make a little bit of money on everything to try to because we had to go out, obviously, like you could appreciate. We have a long mill, but we don't have anything else. We don't have any other wood shop tools. We don't know how to paint. We don't know how to post processing and say, like all the million other things that come with owning a long mill. Mm-hmm. And we've been asked time and time again, and it comes up in the meetings that I have for Noobs, is, hey, like I could do this with a table, or hey, I can do this with it, and they're all wonderful, wonderful things. But my advice to everybody, at least from the way that we perceive it, is you got to decide what you want to be first. And what we are is a wooden sign making business. That's all we want to do. We're not a furniture engraver. We're not anything else. That's what we want to be, and it helps. And I think from your company's perspective, based on our interview today, is that we have all these things, kind of these birdies floating around of things and where we want to go, and it's exciting, and some may work and some may not work and things like that. But we got to remember we got to put a quality product out the door. And I think that's the purpose of why I wanted to talk to you today. Is I'm not getting anything from this. It's not like I'm getting paid out the back door, so to speak. I believe in this product. I want to talk to the people that are literally making the product, and to let them know and to let everybody know that this is a good thing, and we're all building it together. I mean, you guys are listening to everything that we're saying, and I appreciate that. So, Chris, from the bottom of my heart, thank you very much for making this product, you and Andy and everybody that's working in Sienci Labs. You've been very gracious with your time today. I hope I can figure out how to put this up and let everyone else enjoy this conversation. So thank you very much. I hope to talk to you again, and I hope to get a chance to talk to a few other people over the year once I get settled to where we're going in my family. So thank you very much, Chris. Thank everybody in the shop. And I look forward to being a longtime customer and being involved in the community. So thank you, sir, very much.
Yeah, thank you, Gary. I think, I'm more than happy to come and talk with you because I guess one other product that we're working on is not really a product. It's just like have more information so that people, when they get up and started, they know what they can do with a long mill. Sometimes there can be some confusion of like, well, this person has a video showing what they're doing on this other CNC machine, but I'm not sure if that, applies to me. And so I think what you're offering, being able to just kind of sit down and have a very candid conversation with the people, the noobs, the long mill noobs, is a really awesome idea. And I think the more that people can learn about their machines through you, or through, like, we're working with some other people right now to also make different sorts of levels of content, like some for the noobs, some for maybe someone trying to start a business, someone for, all these different things, that they can, go out there and explore and find what works for them. And so I'm more than happy to be on here because I believe in what you're doing as well.
Yeah, it's fun. I'm learning. I'm learning for sure. So thank you, Chris. Please give our best to your staff and your family and everything like that. And I look forward to talking to you again soon. So you have a wonderful afternoon.
You too, Gary. See you.
Take care.